I have to say that it's such a delight and an honor to be able to spend some time with you to hopefully get behind the scenes and into the mind of someone like you who has had so much incredible success, not just as a composer, but as a performer and a multifaceted musician, who of course came from Rice University's Shepherd School of Music. I'd love to just hear from you a sense of what do you feel like it was that you learned at Rice and at the Shepherd School that's had a direct application on the work that you're doing right now?
Well, I think one of the biggest things I've learned, I learned while at Rice was to truly investigate and study and really understand the structure of music, the Grundgestalt of any piece. And so I remember going there as a high school student, so lost, like just I had been performing, but I didn't really do any kind of theoretical analysis. And then really going into music and listening and learning how pieces are constructed harmonically, rhythmically, melodically, and doing that for every piece. And I remember having to do that for, so many assignments and, my recital pieces, that and performing. I mean, those two things, I think, and working with ensembles, I felt so at home as a performer. And I really did think that I was going to be an orchestral percussionist. That was going to be my gig. And I was happy to do it. I was going to be, I performed in Spoleto Orchestra with, the opera orchestra. That was fantastic. I did Berlin, Genesis Musicalis, and the World Orchestra. And that was my goal. I was taking auditions and I wanted to be in an orchestra. But somehow I took a left turn. But that training of performing in ensembles, large orchestra, solo, I did the solo, the concerto, competition. That prepared me for performing live. And that's one of the things I do on all my scores. Is I perform still on all my scores. So I think I loved music, but I didn't understand it, and to the level that I learned while taking all the, music history and ear training and theory and harmony, orchestration, all those classes they prepared me to get to where I could start, working in this field. But before that, I was doing theater too. I learned theater at Rice. How many, theater productions did we do at Sewell Hall and at the dorm? I mean, and I was working the whole time I was a student. So all those experiences and gave me confidence to be up there on the stage. And then when I wound up being on the scoring stage, I think I had that confidence that I wouldn't have had if I just had kind of a general education. But because Rice is a conservatory and very, it's very disciplined, you learn discipline, practicing 8 hours a day. I mean, that was the norm. And so that kind of work you apply to the film scores, and that, that's the same ethic, right? You just work as hard as you can to get the best sounding piece.
So I'm curious how you feel about something. It might be kind of a tricky question, but as over the last 20 years, there's been this extraordinary explosion of musical technology that allows people with basically a laptop to create the sounds of a symphony orchestra or to put a click track together and then do all kinds of amazing things without actually having much of an instrumental training background. How do you reconcile the kind of work that you're able to do with, and having had that incredibly rich experience as a percussionist, how do you compare that kind of training with some of the training that's, maybe very different or non-existent in this day and age for music students?
Well, I always tell the students that I work with who ask me, I say, you have to learn how to write for an orchestra. You have to, because being in the room and having your pieces played by an orchestra and knowing, oh, that oboe is, it's out of range, or this combination, you have to learn textures. And, there is a whole level of music technology now that's very electronic, and you don't need a conservatory degree. Obviously, we know that. and a lot of pop music has it, and there are some film scores that have it as well. But I feel that in order to enhance the music with humanity, you need to be able to work with the musicians. You need to be able to get in front of an orchestra and conduct and, you know, run the sessions. I enjoy doing that. That's my favorite part. So that's why, you know, I'm always saying to students, okay, great. I'm glad you got the music tech part down. Now learn to orchestrate and learn really what that's about, because that's what differentiates people, I think, who know how to do that. So, you know, everybody's path is different. I can't speak for everyone, but I can say that having the background and the education that I got at Rice and Shepherd School has enabled me to really expand my world. When a good example, Disney asked me when I was working on Coco, could I do an orchestral Latin arrangement of the Disney logo? And I said, yeah, I got that. Okay, so I immediately started orchestrating that tune, you know, and I didn't have to think about it. I just wanted to figure out, you know, okay, which Latin, you know, direction I wanted to head. So those are two. It's not even a tool. It's a ability that you learn. And I didn't know it overnight, because when I first started working with orchestras in film, I still had to learn how to orchestrate for film scores. That's different than, or as you know, orchestrating for a concert, a live, you know, performance. So I learned that through my orchestration teacher named John Ashton Thomas, who taught at Royal College in London, and amazing genius musician. And he sat me down and he would go over all my scores, and we would be in the studio together while we were both working for John Powell. And then he'd give me a few notes. Okay, that line was too low for this instrument, you know, and those kind of experiences are, you know, golden. And so I think the fact that Rice is still, you know, performing and providing this conservatory education is essential, because I wouldn't be here. You wouldn't be talking to me today if I didn't have the Rice education and the experiences that I had. And I'm going to thank my brother, because Michael Petrie, he's also a Rice grad. He went to Rice and I was only 16 when I went to Rice. So my mom was like, oh, your brother will protect you and he'll help you out. And so I just followed him there. And that's important to me, because he's an artist and he taught me about being an artist, not just, you know, a sideline musician, an artist, and to really expand, you know, writing and performing as an artist. And I really appreciate that from Rice, because I'm not sure if you knew it, but I used to perform at the Houston Festival as the Rice Percussion Ensemble.
Oh,
Christina
great.
Carroll, and there was only two of us, and we were doing snare drum duets and Bach duets on marimba. I mean,
I
it
love
was
it.
crazy.
Well, on behalf of Rice University, I just like to say that we're delighted that you are still so delighted with the education that you had at Rice, and that you take time to kind of share your own experience and kind of pay it forward a little bit for other people that might be interested in this kind of career. And look, honestly, we're here because one of the reasons, not only to celebrate your past success, but currently you have some really wonderful things happening in your life right now, in particular being nominated for this Academy Award for Encanto, which is such an extraordinary film. And I'm really curious, when you talk about the orchestration that you learned at the Shepherd School or at the Royal Conservatory, where you had to figure out the colors of different instruments and the ranges. And when I think about great orchestrators, I think about Ravel or Mahler, or people who told a whole story based on what instrument was actually playing what kind of melody or harmony within the context of a big orchestra. And the thing that I loved so much about the Encanto score is that you could hear that. You could hear these varied voices and this complexity of rhythm in particular. But it all fit together so beautifully, but there was nothing simple about any of it. So can you talk a little bit about what that process was like as you were imagining either a rhythm or a melody, and then figuring out how to make it work for 100 people on a soundstage.
Well, one of the reasons that I really explored orchestration so deeply was that the two directors, Jared Bush and Byron Howard, said to me, we don't want this to sound like a big Disney orchestra film from beginning to end. We really want something smaller and in moments, in change, you know, the emotional moments, and then it can get big when it needs to. But we're looking for the sound of magical realism. And so that led me down a path of what does magical realism sound like. And I really did a lot of experimenting on my workstation, which is music technology. I have, you know, thousands of samples, and I've got full orchestra at my fingertips. But I was creating new sounds I had bought all these Colombian instruments, and I was recording here in this studio I'm talking to you from, and I bought an arpa llanera, which is a Latin American harp from Colombia and Venezuela. I also I had made a marimba that's only made in Colombia. And it's if you're one of the percussion geeks like I was, it's not the sound that's in your studio at the Shepherd School. It's made of a certain palm tree. So these specific instruments gave a specific sound, also lots of string instruments, a tiple, bandolas, cuatros. I mixed those. And what I did was I layered them with the orchestra so that, and I would try out different sounds. I wrote a lot of score suites away from the picture, and I would play them for the directors and say, okay, I'm thinking about this for when Mirabel is, you know, in the house falls or whatever. And they would respond or not respond. Some of them they didn't like, others they did. So when I knew that they liked something, I would take that orchestration and use it further along for the story. And so what you're hearing is traditional orchestra at moments, but very carefully thought out, like what works well with the harp, and then there's a tremolo and then some strings. And then I would add special effects, you know, plugins, and I wanted an ambient sound, like it sounded far away, because we're talking about a supernatural world that exists within this world, but it's not the fantasy that you have in Harry Potter. So I was trying to find that sonic sound that had to be different than, you know, Snow White or Beauty and the Beast. So that's how I did it. And another important element was the use of the female voice and human voices. I love voice, and I think it's so amazing on film scores, but it has to be used carefully. So I used a lot of female voices. And then in certain moments, I had the low basses and tenors. So I'm always conscious of, okay, how is this sound affecting what you're hearing on the screen? And, you know, I would go back and forth with the directors and the executives. It's a very interesting process. I say it's such a collaboration. You know, I'm inspired by the images too. You see that beautiful, the flowers and the imagery and the animation, all hand drawn, and musically, you want to respond to that. I mean, what would it be like if Debussy were a film composer today in today's world? You know, it'd be amazing.
Well, I'm just as glad that we have you and not Debussy doing this work. But actually, could you tell us a little bit more about that initial process? Because I think for some people who might not be in this world of music, they might have a romanticized view of, you know, how this all works. You see an image, and then you sit down and you spend a couple of hours writing it, and it comes out and it's beautiful. But you're describing an incredibly rigorous and disciplined collaborative process. But where does that process start? Like, how did you see an image? Did they did they give you a storyboard and storylines? How did that work?
I literally had 5 images to start. It was a picture of the family, a family tree, a picture of inside the house. I had 5. And then, because they were still animating it. And then I got one scene, basically, and I started working on that. But the rest of it was all imagining it for like 3-4 months.
Wow.
And then finally, I got all the picture in February, which was almost 4 months later. Yes. So I just had to imagine that world inside my head. But then you get the film cut up into 6 reels. And so each is about almost, 15 minutes or so. And then by then I had all my themes written. So it starts at this instrument, my piano. I mean, I literally sit at the piano and start thinking about a character and kind of thinking about an emotion, and then playing and just kind of getting in that space where you're not thinking about anything, and just wanting to explore some ideas. And a lot of it comes from me singing too. I sing the melodies when I play, but I'm not looking to picture when I'm doing that. When I write my themes, I want to be at the piano, because there's something about the piano that I feel that visceral, different than my workstation piano, which is, it doesn't have the response. Yeah. And also the sonority of the piano inspires me. So I take my ideas and then I'll go play them right into my workstation and record it in Logic. And then once I have a whole piece, I put it up to picture and I figure out, oh, where will that fit? That's how I usually start. I don't sit there and go, oh, I'm just going to like go linearly from A to B on the picture, because you have to conceive. Sometimes the thing you write that is the first thing you write turns to be the last cue of the film, which is exactly what happened here. Really? There's an Encanto theme, which I wrote at piano and sang. And then I developed a longer suite, but I could never put it in the film in its full form because there wasn't time. And so then at the very end, and also the pure kind of orchestral version, it's on the very end cue when she gets, Mirabelle, the protagonist, gets her room. You hear it in the full glory with orchestra and choir, but you hear bits of it throughout the entire piece. So
that's fascinating. Of course, I'm curious though. So for like the big song and dance numbers, doesn't the music have to come first and then be animated, so that they have like a sensibility of what they're musically reacting to dramatically?
Yes. Okay. So that's a very interesting process. I work with Lin-Manuel Miranda, and he's an amazing musician, storyteller, composer as well. He had the songs, because he was on it for over 3 years. I came on it the last year. I got all his demos, which was so cool for me to look inside. It's kind of like peeking inside of Einstein's brain, And so I'm looking at all his sessions and I study all of his work. And then I wound up adding orchestra and producing the orchestra for all the songs. But they have to be, they give the songs to the animators, and then the animators get so excited when they get a song because they just are ready to go, wild. And you see all the flowers and some of those songs. So yes, Lynn's music and the songs, like on Coco, when I worked on that, I wrote the songs, they were not to picture, and then they animated them. Okay. It's the animators need the song to be at least somewhat in demo form. It's a mock-up is what they call it. And then but they'll change the animation sometimes, like this one particular song, it got the Bruno song, that animation was changing often. And the surface pressure, it's never done until someone says it's due for the dove. It's always changing.
Wow. Well, one of the things that really is so immediately apparent about Encanto is that it creates a very specific atmosphere of a family and a family culture and family assumptions and expectations, and all of that feels so like magical realism, certainly, but it feels real. I mean, it feels like it's actually something that is a story that everyone can very easily relate to. But I know so much of it is infused with the music that you've created, which has this Colombian background. And you're from El Paso originally, I believe.
Yes, yeah.
I wonder though, what is it like for you to be a Latina woman who is like the first to be nominated for something like this with the Academy Award? How do you feel? How do you feel? What's that like?
Well, it feels good. At first it was a little, just, so it was so surprising. I've been a member of the Academy. Just to get invited into the Academy is a big deal,
Yeah.
and to have my peers who are the most amazing composers and music editors and executives, for them to really, support the work and the film and me, I felt so honored, because I know how hard it is just to get to this point, to get on what they call the short list. So I was surprised. I really was. But I feel super excited about the fact that things are changing in our world and other different voices are being heard. And, first Latina is important, but I'm not the last. And the door has been open for the rest of all those grads from, Rice and other places to take their place wherever they want to be on the musical world stage, whether it's on the scoring stage or the classical music stage. I really feel that it's important that we see an array of voices. And so being the first, to me, I feel a responsibility to be open and help other people get to this place, because it's not easy and it's a long road. I've been working in this field for over 30 years. I mean, it didn't happen overnight. So to be recognized is a real, amazing experience. And I'm very happy. And I can share this, with my mother, who is the one that took me to all the lessons. And how important that is, the mom who drives, or the dad that drives you to the lessons and believes in you. And I had, a lot of great teachers.
It's so very true that the most successful people in the world, particularly artists, in spite of the fact that we like to think of them as like gritty individuals who make this stuff happen of their own accord, it takes so much support and so much attention in order to give people the skills and the tools and just the ability to have space to kind of create things like you have. So that's what a wonderful testament. One final question for you is, what would you say to current students at the Shepherd School of Music about what they should be thinking about or studying as they begin to launch themselves into a very challenging industry? It's filled with opportunity, but it's also has a lot of challenges in it. So what would you convey to them?
Well, I'm going to say that the first thing is to, whatever it is you love to do, that's what you should be doing, not what someone else thinks you should be doing. Because I know I went to school with some people that were doing stuff because their parents thought they should do it. And I feel that I always loved percussion. I loved playing in the orchestra. And then eventually I started writing at Rice. And I think that we have to develop our own voice and not what we think people want us to be, because that is, I think, what set me apart from my, just as I'm a percussionist, I'm Latina, I'm from the border, I can't hide that. I just have to embrace it. And so if we, as an artist, find out what is it that is your passion and go for that. But you must now, with technology, I learned my technology outside of Rice. I will say that I had to learn on the job. I learned through John Powell, who's his technical skills are amazing. If you want to be a composer in this field, but otherwise you have to, I remember a friend of mine, Ben Ed, he said, don't, if you go down a path that doesn't work, try a different path, but you can't ever give up. If music is what you love and you're not getting success in one field, then you have to look at what you're doing and try another, but don't give up music because for 6 months you couldn't get a gig.
Right.
I mean, find another way to support yourself, but always have that major goal in the end. I mean, I had so many different jobs, you know, while I was at Rice and then after, and then, you know, it's not all glory. It's a lot of sweat and hard work. And you have to be willing to do that in today's world. Because if you're not, then you could go study, you know, neuroscience and do that. That's what I say. If you don't really love it, if you're not passionate, and I'm thinking all the students who are there are, and I feel like it's an amazing road to finding your voice as an artist, but it doesn't happen overnight. It takes so many experiences, so many ensembles, so many teachers, so many failures, you know, learning how to fail and getting back up again and doing it again. And community is the last thing, you know, having wonderful communities that support you, whether they're ensembles, friends, you know, Sundance organization, the Institute. I mean, I've relied on those communities because you can't get there on your own. Well, maybe other people can, but I had a whole village.
Yeah. Well, you speak as eloquently as you write music. So thank you for spending time with us and for offering up your wisdom to future generations, and heartfelt congratulations on all that you've accomplished thus far. And we all look forward to seeing what comes next from you.
But I wanted to say thank you. I was so surprised, Matthew, that you were the one that was going to be interviewing me, because I've been reading about you and I wanted to meet you. And I'm so, you know, I feel like one thing you said, I didn't say it on the, everybody's like, okay, Germaine, how do we get more people like you in the door? And I said, it takes a lot to grow a composer. It's a long path. And I want to do more of that. I'm, you know, working with the music school here in LA. And I just want to encourage people, because it's a, even though it's a hard life in the sense of it's musician, you know, but it's worth it. You know, I feel so happy about that.
Please, please consider it a standing invitation to, you know, if we can find a way to get you here and to do some work with the Shepherd School, not just with the composers, but with students generally, right? I mean, I think the more we cross-pollinate, the more we give opportunities to plain old percussionists to learn something about scoring a film. That'd be great.
Yeah, no more. Okay, so I played that, you know, the Bach. I played Bach. I played Bartok. All that stuff. You think at the time, oh my God, how am I ever going to make a living from this? I didn't tell you that after I graduated from Rice, I worked for 6 months at Radio Shack as a manager, because I was so like, wait, all my friends got big jobs from engineering and I don't have a job. What am I going to do? So, yeah, I think it's important for students to hear that it doesn't happen overnight. You have to keep this, you know, the big picture. Now, I just want you to know that I am so grateful that you reached out, because it's important that people know I came from Rice. I'm always talking up Rice, believe me.
Thank you. That's terrific. You frankly, you make it really easy for us to keep talking up Rice.
Well, I have to tell you one thing, or my brother would be very upset with me.
Yeah.
I don't think you know this, but my great grandfather was a cook at Rice.
No.
And my brother went to Rice, and now here I am nominated for an Oscar because of Rice.
That's a pretty amazing journey.
Yeah.
That is really amazing. Well, congratulations. And you know, I think really you're such a powerful representative of so many different things. And it's lovely that you're sharing this with us and with the world, and that you're such a great advocate.
Thank you. We'll be representing the Rice Owls.
Bring it on.